So now to tying on. We need to tie the reed, the perfectly shaped piece of cane that we've just made onto the staple. So here's our staple. I use D12 clock for coffee staples, and because of that you have to use a mandrel that's the same. You can't just use any old mandrel, it has to fit the staples, and only use staples that fit absolutely perfectly on the mandrel, that are exactly the right fit. If I have a look at another staple here, you can see that that just doesn't fit. You can't see the end of the mandrel at the top of the staple. It just doesn't fit, so it's no good. We don't use that one. So that's the first two things we need. We also need an easel for scraping down the ends of the cane, a pair of pliers for twisting wire, cigarette lighter for heating up the mandrel, beeswax for coating the thread, wire for securing the cane in place on the staple, nail varnish for finishing off, and some nice strong thread. This thread's particularly good. It's slightly springy, not too thick, but very, very strong. So that's ideal. It has to be strong enough that you can pull the cane nice and tight, but not too thick, otherwise it doesn't seal properly. So the first thing we do, get our shaped piece of cane, lay it on the easel, and we're going to trim the cane back at the ends from about 2 millimeters from the end, scraping that back so it's nice and thin, and this will just help the cane to shape around the staple better. And just above where you scraped, just mark a little cross in the cane, and this will help. If the cane splits at the bottom, then it shouldn't go any further than that cross, and it just helps the cane to be a bit more flexible. I'll do the same on the other side. Mark a little cross. Okay. In between stages I always put the cane back into soak. So now we take a piece of wire, cut a short length with some pliers, and I'm going to wrap this once around the end of the mandrel, right at the bottom where it's the thickest point. Bring the two ends together and twist them round. Then you can carry on twisting and pulling the wire tight with your pliers. Twist and pull, so that you've got a double loop of wire. Take our piece of cane again and pop the piece of wire over the end to just about the level of your cross that you've marked on, and put that back into soak once again. Now we're going to get a cigarette lighter and the mandrel, and we're going to heat up the end of the mandrel. Don't put the mandrel in the flame, keep it a little bit underneath. Keep turning it over and heat it for around about 20 seconds, or until you can feel the heat travelling down the metal. And just start to feel that getting warm now. Okay, take our water and just pop the very, very tip in the water, just so that that doesn't singe the end of the cane. Pop the cane on the mandrel, it sizzles a bit till it's about halfway up, and this pre-shapes the cane into the right shape. Again, we're going to take the pliers and pull and twist on that wire, pull and twist so that the cane closes around the mandrel. Take care that it's closing the same on each side. You can see here it's almost closed on that side and it's almost closed on that side. Pull and twist. Okay. and take the cane off the mandrel and push the wire just a little bit further up, because it should be quite tight at this point. Sometimes I find the best way is to actually push it up with your teeth. It's about the only way to get it up. Okay, now we can put our staple on the mandrel. Again, just checking it fits absolutely perfectly up to the end. And pop the cane on the staple. And that should already fit quite nice and snug, nice and tight. Make sure that it's straight. It should be absolutely straight up, not leaning off to one side, and it should sit nice and flat. Your overall tie-on length will depend on the length of staple that you're using, and that depends on what pitch you're playing at and what your instrument's like. Use a digital vernier caliper. They're the easiest. Set that to the tie-on length and make sure that your reed fits absolutely perfectly to the right length. There we go. Right from the bottom to the top, fits absolutely perfectly within that measurement. I always then use, to save time, I use a second vernier caliper, and this one is set to the length of the staple. You want the wire to be absolutely to the level of the top of the staple. You can see this one is just a little bit higher, so I'm going to push that down very slightly. And now that's at the top of the end. This is important because it means you cannot over tie the reed onto the staple over the top of the end of the staple then, as that stops it vibrating. And then just to make sure that's nice and tight, we're going to once again just tighten that, pulling and twisting on the wire. Check that that's nice and straight. You can also look down the end of the cane. You won't be able to see this, but you've got an oval. The end of the staple is an oval like that. And the cane should sit absolutely flat and not at an angle. Shouldn't look like that, should look like that when you look down the end of the staple. Okay, so we're happy with that, so now we can tie on. So I've got a hook tied into the front of my desk here for tying the thread on. You need something nice and firm to tie it to. That's going to stay put, because you're going to be pulling quite firmly on that. Take your beeswax, a little bit of beeswax along the length of the thread. Roll that back up again. And then we're going to place the reed on top of the thread, a couple of turns below our wire. So not level with the top of the wire, not right down at the bottom, just a little bit below the wire. Take the thread to the back and bring it back underneath the reed. Pull that nice and firmly and repeat again, going up towards the wire. Now when you've reached the wire, just put your finger on that to hold it steady. Just check that once again that you've not gone over the level of the top of the staple. The end of this gauge indicates the top of the staple and you want to be a millimetre or so below that, which we are. So, happy with that. One last little pull on that to make sure it's all nice and taut, and then cross the thread back over to the bottom where you started and continue to wind round to the bottom of the cane. Now there are two schools of thought on this, as there are with everything to do with oboe reed making, and some people tie all the way down to the bottom of the metal to where the cork meets the metal. I prefer to tie on just to below where the cane ends, like that, because I feel that this vibrates better. If you've got this free metal here, it vibrates better. Okay, now we need to secure that. So we're going to put a loop in the wire and put that over the reed and pull it tight. Do that 3 or 4 times, pulling it tight each time. There we go. And just snip the ends off with a pair of scissors. You can also at this point, carefully making sure that you don't snip through your thread, snip off the wire. There we have, beautifully tied on reed. And just to secure the thread, and also if you use different colour of nail varnish so that you can identify it, we're just going to brush a layer of that on. Sometimes I use red for one batch of reeds and then I might use a different colour for a different batch of reeds so that you can see which has come from what day's reed making. And there we have it, beautifully tied on oboe reed.